The airline agent held Jemimah Cole's boarding pass in both hands, looked her dead in the eye, and tore it clean in half. And Nelson Brooks, her ex-husband, standing 8 feet away in a coat that still had the tag money on it, threw his head back and laughed. Beside him, his new wife, Vanessa, clapped. Actually clapped, fingertips together, the way you applaud a child's recital. The whole boarding line at gate 18 turned to watch. Some looked away, embarrassed. Some leaned it in. A businessman lowered his phone to film it. And Jemimah stood there in her simple gray travel coat, holding 2 halves of a boarding pass she'd saved 3 paychecks to buy, and said nothing at all. 90 seconds? That's how long it took. 90 seconds after that boarding pass hit the floor, every departure screen in Terminal 3 went black at once. Not glitchy, not flickering. Black. 40 gates worth of monitors, dark in the same instant. The jet bridge at gate 18 began retracting from the aircraft with a slow mechanical groan. The captain's voice came over the gate phone, and the agent who'd torn the pass went white as she listened, because the captain was refusing to close the door. Somewhere down the concourse, 2 airport executives in suits started running, and every person in that terminal heard the same 6 words come down over the intercom, in a calm voice that did not belong to any airline. Nobody boards until I find my woman. Nelson stopped laughing. Now, before I tell you why the most feared mafia boss in Korea held an entire international terminal hostage over one woman in economy, I have to tell you why Jemimah almost didn't come to this airport at all. Because the woman you just watched get her ticket ripped in half 2 years ago, she had everything. And she gave it away to the man who just laughed at her. I have to ask you a real question. If you were standing in that line, watching an ex-husband tear up your hard-earned ticket, would you have stayed quiet like Jemimah? Or would you have caused a full-blown scene right then and there? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I want to see who in my audience has peace and who has problems. And if you're already praying for Nelson's downfall, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss a single second of this payback. Now, let's go back to 2 years ago, long before the terminal went dark. If you'd met Jemimah Cole 2 years ago, you'd have met a woman with paint on her hands and hope in her whole body. She was 28, an art teacher with a laugh that filled a room. And she loved Nelson Brooks the way you love someone when you're young and stupid and sure, all the way with nothing held back and no receipts kept. You're going to change the world, she used to tell him, and I get a front row seat. Nelson was getting his MBA back then, which is to say Jemimah was getting Nelson his MBA. She worked 3 jobs to do it, art teacher by day, weekend shifts at a bakery where she came home smelling like cinnamon and exhaustion, and late nights doing the books for a laundromat owner named Mr. Adebayo, who paid her cash and let her nap in the back when it was slow. "You look tired, my daughter," Mr. Adebayo told her once. "I'm fine," she said. She was always fine. She wasn't fine. She was surviving on instant noodles and instant coffee and the belief that this was temporary, that this was investment, that one day she and Nelson would look back on the hard years and laugh. She sold her jewelry. All of it. Her mother's gold bracelet, the one thing she had left of the woman, went to cover Nelson's business school application fees. "I'll buy you a better one," Nelson promised, kissing the bare spot on her wrist. "Solid gold when we make it." She believed him. She helped him build the consulting company from a folding table in their 1-bedroom apartment. She named it. She designed the first logo herself, sitting up till 4 a.m. with a cracked laptop. She missed her own best friend's wedding because Nelson had a client dinner and needed her there to make him look established. And every time she was tired, every time she wondered if she was disappearing into his dream, Nelson would take her hand and make her the promise that kept her going for 4 long years. "One day, Jem, I swear to you, I'm going to fly you first class. Champagne, the little slippers, the whole thing. You've earned it more than anybody alive. Hold on to that promise. First class, champagne, the little slippers. Because in about 40 minutes, Nelson is going to keep the shape of that promise. First class, champagne, the whole thing, and give every bit of it to another woman, right in front of Jemimah's face. But we're getting ahead of ourselves." The company took off. And the exact month Brooks Consulting signed its first 6-figure contract, the month all those years of noodles and naps finally turned into money. Nelson came home, sat Jemimah down at the folding table she'd built his empire on, and told her he'd outgrown the relationship. "You're not going to understand this," he said, "because you don't move in the circles I move in now, but I need a partner who fits the next chapter." Jemimah stared at him. I built this chapter. And I'll always be grateful. He actually checked his watch. I have a call. 6 months later, he married Vanessa, a woman who'd never met him poor, who wore the life Jemimah had paid for like she'd been born into it. They honeymooned in the Maldives. Jemimah found out from an ad that had followed her around the internet because the algorithm didn't know she wasn't supposed to see it. She didn't fall apart. Everyone expected her to fall apart. Instead, she got very, very quiet, and she started saving, and she started applying for jobs as far from Nelson Brooks as a human being could get. Which is how, on a Tuesday morning in Lagos, an email arrived with a subject line that made her hands shake. Congratulations, Seoul International Arts Fellowship. A year in Korea. Teaching. Her own name on the door. A whole ocean between her and the wreckage. She read it 11 times. Then she booked the cheapest one-way economy ticket she could find, packed one suitcase, and told exactly one person she was leaving. She thought she was leaving quietly. She thought she was slipping out of her old life without a sound. What Jemimah didn't know, what nobody at that airport knew, was that somebody had been quietly keeping track of her for a long time, and he was already on his way. The morning of the flight, Jemimah stood in the middle of the airport and let herself feel it. The fresh start, warm and terrifying, humming under her ribs. The terminal was alive. A toddler was having a full philosophical crisis about a dropped pretzel. A businessman argued with a check-in kiosk like it had personally insulted his mother. Somewhere, a gospel choir's worth of a family was seeing off a grandmother. Everybody crying, everybody hugging. The grandmother clearly ready to leave 20 minutes ago. And speaking of grandmothers, ma'am, that's not your cart. Jemimah turned to see a tiny elderly woman in a church hat power walking away with a luggage trolley, pursued by a security guard who very much did not want to be doing this. It has better wheels than mine, the grandmother announced, not slowing down. Ma'am, they're the same carts. This one is lucky. I can feel it. My knees never lie. Ma'am, please chase me faster then. At my age, this is the most exercise I've had all week. The whole gate area cracked up. A guy in a hoodie started narrating it like a nature documentary. And Jemimah, who had woken up that morning with a stone in her chest, felt herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in what felt like a year. Remember that grandmother. She's got exactly nothing to do with the plot, and she's going to be the best part of your day, I promise. Jemimah bought herself a coffee, splurged on a real one, with her name spelled wrong on the cup. Jemimah, which made her snort. She bought herself a sandwich she didn't need, and she found a quiet seat by the window, pulled out the little notebook she carried everywhere, and wrote, "Today I stopped waiting for people who never chose me." She underlined it twice. She meant it. She could feel that she meant it. Whatever was on the other side of this flight, a tiny apartment, a language she didn't speak, a job she was terrified she'd be bad at, it was hers, built with her own 2 hands, and no one could take it or tear it in half. She capped her pen. She looked up, and standing at the first-class check-in counter, matching leather luggage gleaming, matching gold priority tags swinging, matching smug little smiles already aimed in her direction, were Nelson and Vanessa Brooks, of every flight, out of every city, on every possible morning. Of course. Now here's the thing you need to understand about a man like Nelson. He could have walked past her. He saw her first. He had time. He could have kept his mouth shut and boarded his fancy flight and left her alone. He chose not to. And in about 30 seconds, that choice is going to cost him more than he has ever owned in his life. If you're already on Jemimah's side, do me a favor and tap that like button. It helps this story find the people who need it. Now watch him walk over. Nelson clocked her from across the terminal, said something to Vanessa, and the two of them changed course like sharks who'd smelled blood in a swimming pool. "Jemimah," Nelson said, arriving with his arms spread, delighted. "No way. Small world." "Nelson, you look..." He did a little up and down. "You look great. Tired, but great. Where you headed?" "Seoul." "Seoul?" He turned to Vanessa. "Babe, she's going to Seoul. Isn't that where we're going to Seoul?" Vanessa confirmed sweetly and let the moment hang. "Business class connection, then the resort." She smiled. "You're still traveling alone?" I'm fine on my own, Jemimah said. Of course you are. Vanessa touched her own chest, all sympathy. It's just a woman your age flying by herself, starting completely over. It's very brave. She said brave the way you'd say sad. I could never. I don't even like getting coffee alone. You get used to it? Do you, though? Vanessa's eyes went soft with fake concern. Or do you just tell yourself that? Nelson held up his boarding pass, right at Jemimah's eye level, close enough that she could read the gold letters. First class. You know I finally did it, he said, flying first. Remember I always said I would? He didn't wait. It's a whole different world up there, Jim. Lie-flat seats, real champagne, not the sparkling stuff. They call you by your name. He glanced at her cup. Jemimah, ha. They don't misspell it in first class. Vanessa fanned herself with her own gold-tagged pass. Honestly, marriage looks good on me. Look at all this. She gestured at the luggage, the tags, the man. Some women just attract the upgrade, you know? A gate agent walked past and Nelson flagged her down, loudly, so it carried. Excuse me, hi. When you're doing the seating, can you make sure my ex-wife isn't anywhere near us? We're newlyweds. He said it with a wink, a stage whisper meant for an audience. Little awkward, you understand. The agent, mortified, mumbled something and fled. A few people in the boarding line chuckled. Jemimah's ears went hot, but she kept her eyes on the window and her spine straight. Then Nelson did the thing that he'd clearly been building to. He reached into his coat, pulled out a crumpled voucher, and held it out to her between two fingers like a tip. Here, lounge pass. We're not going to use it. We've got the first-class lounge. He smiled, warm and awful. Maybe this is the closest you'll get to the good life today. Take it. Consider it for old times. Vanessa laughed so hard she snorted, then covered her mouth, delighted with herself. Jemimah looked at the voucher. She looked at Nelson, and she did not take it. Into the ringing little silence, a small clear voice piped up from the boarding line. Daddy, said a boy, maybe 5, tugging his father's sleeve and pointing directly at Nelson. Why is that man being so loud? Is he in trouble? The father's face did a heroic job of not laughing. Nobody, he sounds like he's in trouble. I'm not, Nelson started. Is he going to get a timeout? The entire boarding line lost it. The guy in the hoodie wheezed. Even the mortified gate agent bit her lip. Nelson's face went a shade of red that clashed with his expensive coat. And for one glorious second, the loudest man in gate 18 had absolutely nothing to say. Jemimah pressed her lips together, but a laugh escaped anyway, bright, real, and just for her. Enjoy that. Little kid, big truth, whole room laughing. Because Vanessa's about to do something that wipes the smile right off Jemimah's face, and it's the cruelest thing anyone's done yet. Vanessa didn't like losing the room. You could see it land on her. So she drifted over to the gate agent, the same one now back at the podium, leaned in and whispered just loud, enough for the nearest travelers to catch it. I don't want to make a thing of it, Vanessa murmured, glancing back at Jemimah. But that woman over there, she's my husband's ex. She's been following us. She's obsessed with him. I'd feel safer if security kept an eye on her. You understand? I just want to feel safe. It was a lie built like a trap, and it worked exactly the way lies like that always work. The gate agent's face shifted. She murmured into her radio, and within a minute, a security officer had positioned himself near Jemimah's seat, arms folded, watching her, the woman who'd done nothing but sit quietly by a window and write in a notebook. Jemimah felt the eyes on her, felt the whole terminal reclassify her in an instant, from woman starting over to problem to be managed. Her face burned, her hands in her lap curled into fists, but she didn't cry. She would not cry. She'd promised herself in the notebook. And Jemimah Cole was very, very good at keeping the promises other people never bothered to keep. She just breathed and stared at the planes on the tarmac and waited for it to be over. She had no idea it was about to begin. Cut across the airport to the part travelers like Jemimah never see, the private aviation wing. Quiet, cool, No announcements, no crying toddlers, no torn boarding passes. Just a wall of glass, a black leather chair, and a man in it who made the whole silent room feel like it was holding its breath. Doko Hyun-seo sat with one ankle crossed over his knee, a black cap low over sharp eyes, a fitted black shirt doing nothing to hide the ink that ran down both arms, dense, deliberate tattoos, the kind that mean something, curling up his neck and across the backs of his hands. He was reading a folder. He read the way some men load a weapon. Slow, unhurried, complete. He did not look like a chairman. Chairman fidget, chairman perform. He looked like weather. The door opened. His head of security, a broad, quiet man named Beck, stepped in and waited to be acknowledged because you did not interrupt the boss. Hyun-seo turned a page. Speak. Boss. Beck dipped his head. Miss Jemimah has arrived. She's at gate 18, terminal 3. Economy. A pause. There's a situation. Hyun-seo's eyes came up. Just his eyes. What situation? Her ex-husband is on the same flight, first class. He's been... Beck chose the word carefully. Performing for an audience. The staff have started watching her, boss. The new wife told them she was a threat. For a moment, Doko Hyun-seo said nothing at all. Then he closed the folder, set it down, and stood in that unhurried way of his, buttoning nothing, adjusting nothing, a man who did not need to prepare because he was always already ready. Boss, Baek said, your instructions? Hyun-seo looked out the glass wall toward the far terminal, where somewhere a woman he'd been quietly watching over for 2 years was sitting under a guard's suspicious eyes with her ticket torn in half. A very small smile touched the corner of his mouth. It did not reach the rest of his face. Hold the terminal, he said. Beck blinked. The whole terminal, boss? There are protocols. The airport authority will... Then they'll answer to me. He was already walking. Nobody in Terminal 3 boards, taxis, or pushes back until I say so. He pulled the cap lower. Let's go bring my woman home. No phone call, no secret text. Nobody signaled him. He wasn't waiting for a distress code. He was already coming, because a man like Doko Hyun-seo doesn't wait for the woman he's chosen to ask for help. He just makes sure the world is safe for her before she even knows there was a danger. And right now, the world at gate 18 is about to get very, very safe. First class boarded first, the way it always does. Nelson made a show of it. One arm around Vanessa, boarding pass held up like a trophy. A little wave back toward Jemimah as he stepped onto the jet bridge. Bye, Jem. Enjoy the back. Vanessa blew her a kiss. They disappeared down the bridge, into the wide seat and the warm towels and the champagne. And Jemimah sat in the hard plastic economy chair under the security guard's stare and told herself, just get on the plane. Just get in your seat. 9 hours and you never have to see them again. Economy started boarding. Jemimah stood, gathered her one carry-on, moved towards. The line and every screen in Terminal 3 went black. Then they all lit up at once, 40 of them. The same 3 words in stark white. Terminal operations, hold. The boarding music cut out mid-song. The gate agent's scanner went dead in her hand. Down the concourse, the departure boards for every gate flipped to the same message. The jet bridge at gate 18, halfway to reconnecting, simply stopped. For a second, nobody moved. Then the whole terminal started talking at once. What's going on? Is it a security thing? Are we delayed? Are we all delayed? The gate agent grabbed her phone, listened, and went pale. I'm sorry, everyone. We're being told to hold all departures. I don't have any more information than that. This is unacceptable. A businessman in a too tight suit was on his feet, waving his phone. I have a merger in Seoul. Do you people understand what a merger is? I will miss my meeting. And from 4 seats down, a familiar voice, dry as toast. Then maybe, said the grandmother in the church hat, not even looking up from her knitting, your meeting needed to learn some patience. The businessman gaped at her. Do you know how much money? I know that when the good Lord wants you somewhere late, the grandmother said serenely, he holds the plane. Sit down, baby. Have a snack. She held out a butterscotch. Your blood sugar's making decisions for you. The whole gate roared. Someone actually applauded. The businessman sat down, defeated by a woman with a butterscotch and superior moral authority. And then the airport director arrived. You knew he was the director because he was the only man in the building running full speed in a suit, tie flipped over his shoulder, ID badge bouncing, face shining with a very specific kind of panic. The panic of a man whose entire career is currently on fire. He skidded to a stop at gate 18, breathing hard, and scanned the crowd with wild eyes. Where is she? He demanded. Where is Miss Jemimah Cole? Silence. 50 confused travelers looked at each other. Jemimah Cole, the director said again, louder, almost begging. She's supposed to be at this gate. Where is she? Slowly, every head in that terminal turned toward the window, toward the woman in the gray coat with the misspelled coffee, sitting frozen with her carry-on in her hand and an expression of total bewilderment. Jemimah looked behind her to see who them meant. There was no one behind her. Me, she said. He didn't come through the jet bridge. A door at the end of the concourse opened, the service door, unmarked, the kind travelers never notice, and Doko Hyunseo walked through it into Terminal 3, and the temperature of the whole room seemed to change. No convoy, no sunglasses and earpieces, wall of muscle. Just him and Beck a respectful step behind. And the airport's own security officers, the ones who'd been told to watch Jemimah, instinctively straightening up and stepping back out of his path before anyone told him to. He walked slow, black cap, black shirt, ink down both arms and up his throat, catching the light. And as he passed, the whisper started low and electric, rippling ahead of him like a wave. Is that Boss Doko? An executive in an expensive suit actually lowered his head as Hyunseo passed, not a nod, a bow. The director stopped running and went still, hands folding in front of him like a schoolboy. Hyunseo didn't look at any of them. He was looking at exactly one thing. He crossed the entire terminal, past the celebrities and the businessmen and the gawking crowd, and he stopped in front of a woman in a gray coat who was staring up at him like she'd forgotten how her own lungs worked. He took her in, the exhaustion around her eyes, the way she was sitting braced like she expected another blow, the security guard still hovering nearby, the two halves of a torn boarding pass on the floor by her feet. His jaw tightened, and the first thing Doko Hyunseo said, quiet, but in that silence it carried to every corner of the gate, was not hello, it was who made my woman cry. The terminal stopped breathing. Jemimah's mouth opened. I'm not crying, you were about to. He crouched, bringing himself to her eye level, and his voice dropped to something meant only for her. You've been about to for 2 hours. I can see it. He glanced at the guard, at the crowd, at the whole machine that had spent the morning making her small. Not anymore. He reached down and picked up her carry-on himself, the most feared man in the room, carrying an economy passenger's scuffed suitcase like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then he looked at the cold coffee sitting beside her, picked it up, and secure without breaking stride, dropped it in a bin. Beck, boss, fresh coffee, hot. Her name is spelled Jemimah. A beat. Whoever spelled it wrong should be worried. Yes, boss. Jemimah let out a sound that was half a laugh and half a sob. It's just coffee. It doesn't... Cold coffee is unacceptable, Hyunseo said simply. For the woman I intend to spend the rest of my life making warm. Let that one sit for a second. He didn't say I love you. He didn't make a speech. He threw away a cold coffee and told a whole terminal what she meant to him in one sentence. And somewhere down that jet bridge, a man in first class is starting to realize the flight isn't leaving. And he's about to come find out why. Down the jet bridge, Nelson had heard the announcement, felt the plane go quiet, and finally lost his patience. He came storming back up into the terminal, tie loose, face flushed. Excuse me, what is going on? Why isn't this plane? He stopped. He took in the scene, the frozen crowd, the bowing director, the tattooed stranger crouched in front of his ex-wife, holding her suitcase. Who the hell are you? Nelson said. Hyunseo didn't answer him, didn't even turn his head. He kept his eyes on Jemimah, and he said gently only to her, You're safe now. Hey. Nelson took a step closer, bravado papering over the first crags of fear. "I'm talking to you. Did you do this? Did you delay my flight?" Slowly, Dogo Hyunseo rose to his full height and turned around, and the airport director, sweating desperate, that's got there first. He rushed forward and bowed low from the waist. "Boss Dogo, sir, whatever you need. The terminal is holding exactly as instructed. Everything is..." "Boss Dogo." Nelson's voice cracked on it. He looked around at the faces, at the bowing director, at the way even the security guards were standing like soldiers. The name meant nothing to him and everything to everyone else, and you could see him doing the math and not liking the answer. Hyunseo looked at Nelson for the first time. It was not a warm look. "You asked if I delayed your flight," he said. Yeah, I did. No." Hyunseo let the pause stretch. "I delayed this terminal." The words dropped into the silence like stones into a well. "All of it," Hyunseo went on evenly. "Every gate, every departure, every passenger in this building is standing still right now." He tilted his head. "Do you want to know why?" Nelson's mouth worked. This is insane. You can't just..." "Because nobody," Hyunseo said, and though his voice never rose, something underneath it went cold enough to frost the glass. "Humiliates my woman in front of a room full of strangers and then boards a comfortable flight to a resort like nothing happened. That's not a world I allow to exist." Vanessa came clattering up the jet bridge at exactly that moment, heels loud, luggage in tow. "Nelson, what is taking so..." She caught her heel on the lip of the jet bridge. She went down. Her oversized designer suitcase hit the floor, popped its latches, and exploded. Designer shoes scattering across the terminal like a piñata full of red souls. A stiletto skittered all the way to a toddler, who picked it up, examined it with deep seriousness, and put it on his own tiny foot. "Mine," the toddler announced, and clumped off wearing one enormous heel while his mother chased him. The terminal lost it. Phones came out. The grandmother in the church hat nodded slowly, like she'd expected this all along. Vanessa scrambled up, red-faced, grabbing at shoes. "Don't just somebody help me." Nobody helped her. That's the thing about being cruel to a room full of people. When you fall down, nobody's in a hurry to pick you up. But we're not done, because Nelson's about to make the single dumbest decision of his entire life, and it involves grabbing something he has absolutely no right to touch. Hyunseo turned back to Jemimah and offered his hand palm up. "Let's go." Jemimah rose, and as she stepped toward him, Nelson, panicking, humiliated, watching his whole performance collapse, did the thing. He grabbed her wrist. "Jemimah, wait, you can't just leave with... You don't even know this guy. You're being..." The terminal inhaled. Dogo Hyunseo looked down at the hand on Jemimah's wrist. Then, without anger, without drama, with the calm of a man removing a bug from his sleeve, he took hold of Nelson's fingers and peeled them off her one at a time and set his hand firmly back at his side. "You lost the privilege of touching her," Hyunseo said quietly, "the day you stopped respecting her." Then he stepped between them, putting his own body between Jemimah and the man who'd torn her ticket in half, then looked Nelson dead in the eyes. "You're speaking to someone who no longer belongs in your life," he said. "Look at her. Really look. That's the last time you'll ever be this close." And then, one word, cold, final, absolute. "Mine." Everyone thought it was over. Nelson shaking back toward the jet bridge. Fine, keep her. We've got a flight to catch. Come on, Vanessa, gather your shoes. We're leaving these people to their little..." That's when the captain's voice came over the terminal intercom. Clear, cold, official. "Mr. Nelson Brooks, Mrs. Vanessa Brooks, please gather your belongings and disembark the aircraft immediately. You are no longer cleared to travel on this flight." Nelson froze. "What?" "That's a mistake," Vanessa said, clutching a single recovered heel. Tell them that's a mistake." Two cabin crew appeared at the top of the jet bridge, faces professionally blank, and it was not a mistake. They escorted Nelson and Vanessa back up into the terminal, past the entire crowd, past every person who'd watched them mock Jemimah, phones out and recording now, the whole humiliation running perfectly, beautifully backward. Outside the gate, Nelson finally cracked. "You can't do this," he shouted at Hyunseo. "You think you can just..." You delayed a whole terminal to steal my... You'll be sued. You'll be... Actually, Hyunseo said, that wasn't me. Nelson stopped. What? Hyunseo nodded, and Beck stepped forward and held out a tablet. On the screen, a news alert glowed. Brooks Consulting under federal investigation. Procurement fraud. Money laundering. While you spent your morning tearing up a boarding pass, Hyunseo said, some people who've been reviewing your company's books for 8 months finished their work. He said it without a shred of drama, which made it so much worse. Your accounts are frozen. Your contracts are suspended. The partnership in Seoul you were flying to close? He glanced at the tablet. They released a statement 20 minutes ago. They've never heard of you. Vanessa snatched the tablet, scrolled. Her face drained of color as headline after headline loaded. Nelson, she whispered. Nelson, tell me this isn't true. He couldn't, because it was. You lied to me, Vanessa said, backing away from him, clutching her one shoe. You said we were. She looked at the frozen accounts, the canceled contracts, the ruin. You don't have any of it. You never had any of it. And Vanessa Brooks turned and walked away, heels clicking unevenly, leaving Nelson standing alone in the middle of a terminal full of people who had watched him laugh 2 hours ago. Alone, exactly the way he'd left Jemimah standing, once at a folding table. You upgraded the wrong woman. He didn't even have to say it. The whole terminal was thinking it. Nelson won the upgrade and lost the only person who ever made his life worth upgrading. And now he gets to stand there and feel every ounce of what he made her feel. But this story doesn't end on him. It was never about him. Stay with me for the part that actually matters. They didn't board the commercial flight. Hyunseo walked her the other way, out a private exit onto the tarmac, toward a sleek black jet with gold trim that gleamed in the morning sun. The terminal, its one held moment finally over, groaned back to life behind them. Somewhere a departure board flipped green and 100 delayed travelers cheered. Jemimah stopped at the bottom of the jet stairs. The wind pulled at her gray coat. Wait. Her voice was small. I have to ask, did you stop an entire terminal? For me. Hyunseo turned. The dangerous eyes were, for her and only her, gentle. No, he said. She blinked. No. I didn't stop it because you're beautiful. I didn't stop it to embarrass him. He stepped closer and reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. A small, careful gesture from a man, built out of hard edges. I stopped it because the woman I love spent too many years standing in lines waiting for people who never once chose her. His hand rested against her cheek. And I decided that today the whole world was going to wait for her instead, just once, so she'd know what it felt like. Jemimah's eyes filled, and this time she let them. How long? She managed. How long have you? 2 years. He said it simply. The foundation. The scholarship you funded out of a teacher's salary when you had nothing. I saw a woman give away what little she had to children she'd never meet, then ask for no credit, and I thought... His thumb brushed away a tear. There she is. The one who was never going to ask me for anything. So I decided a long time ago that I would just have to give it to her before she thought to say no. You could have said something, anytime, 2 years. You weren't ready. He almost smiled. You were still waiting for him to come back and be sorry. I don't compete with ghosts, Jemimah. I just wait for the woman to bury them herself. He took her hand. You buried him this morning. I watched you do it. That's why I came down those stairs. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to the backs of her fingers. From today, he said, the only person you will ever wait for again is me. And I will never once make you wait long. And Jemimah Cole, who had worked 3 jobs, sold her mother's bracelet, built a man's whole world and been thrown away for it, who had promised herself in a notebook that she was done waiting, put her face in her hands and cried. Not because of the jet, not because of the terminal, or the tattoos, or the word mine, but because for the first time in longer than she could remember, someone had known her worth before she'd had to prove it. Someone had chosen her when she was tired and torn up and traveling alone, spelled wrong on a coffee cup, and had decided she was worth stopping the whole world for. He didn't rush her. He just stood there, on the tarmac and let her cry into a chest that wasn't going anywhere. Then quietly into her hair. Get used to it. The jet lifted into a clean blue sky, and for the first time in 2 years, Jemimah wasn't leaving anything behind. She was finally going somewhere she was wanted. Somewhere over the coastline, Beck leaned in from the front of the cabin, phone in hand, voice low. "Boss, Nelson isn't done. He's already calling reporters. Says you abused your influence, illegally held the terminal. He's going to the press." Across the cabin, Jemimah had finally fallen asleep against the window, calm for the first time in years. Doko Hyun Seo looked at her for a long moment. Then he closed his laptop and a very faint, very cold smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Good," he said softly. He just made his biggest mistake yet. Because here's what Nelson still doesn't understand, even now. The frozen accounts, the canceled contracts, the investigation that landed at the worst possible second. Boss Doko told him the truth. That part wasn't him. But the timing? The way it all came down on the exact morning Nelson chose to tear up her ticket? That's the question you should be asking. How much of today did a man who's been watching over her for 2 years actually arrange? And what happens when Nelson decides to fight a mafia boss in the press? That's chapter 2. It's already up. Tap it now and comment "Upgrade the Right Woman" if Jemimah deserved every second of that ending. I'll see you there.